Alright, so there was another video sooner than I thought because I ended up doing some things. I was looking at the some pictures on the Fast Forward Supercharger website of the vacuum distribution block, and I thought the fittings were supposed to stick out straight, but they're actually supposed to point down. So I was able to mount it somewhere where it wasn't in the way of the intake, so I just went ahead and mounted it. So it's there on the wall. So I did find out something that I wish I had known before, but I didn't know, so it's too bad. It's too late. So that's for the brake booster. So it comes from right over there, it loops down, comes around. That one is for the supercharger something thingy-majiggy. So that one loops around there and then is attached to that thing. It's for the bypass, I believe is what it is. Yeah. So brake booster, bypass actuator, FPS I don't have, that's fuel pressure solenoid. So that's only on the newer ones. They have the cruise control line. Boost sensor I also don't have. That's apparently what Mazda calls the EGR. So I don't have that. And then purge solenoid, that is for the charcoal canister that I was trying to figure out yesterday. And then TBA is the throttle body adapter, which is that long thing that runs underneath the adapter way down there that the PCV is also attached to. So what happened is I had already put all the fittings in, assuming I had all the things, and I didn't. So that one there should have actually been a plug. So since it wasn't, and I already had everything run, what I did was I made this kind of homolog ablation down here. So I had that vacuum line off the transmission. So right here, I teed that into the cruise control lines. They'd both get vacuum. But then I had that open vacuum port. So what I did is I ran another vacuum line and teed it in again down here. So essentially, two of those vacuum ports are feeding two of those lines simultaneously through a combination of tees. And hopefully that'll be fine. Because essentially, because if I've got the hoses on there, I can't bring that thing back out to remove that fitting and put a plug in it. So I just kind of did whatever. And it should work. So then the other thing, we got a vacuum line on the FPR now. It's been moved into a spot where it won't hit the belt. There's about a ½ inch of clearance. Once I get the tension and everything on there, I'll see if it's going to be a problem. Because I can push it farther back, but I have no way to hold it farther back right now, so it's something I'd have to figure out. But that goes into, you can't even see it, but it adapts to a smaller piece of line down there. And you can also see there's those two big like bolt heads, and then there's that small fitting off to the farthest to the left. That is the boost signal. So that and the fuel pressure regulator run into this Y right here. And then that goes along here and into, you can see it, that little grommet down there, which also has some wires going into it. Those wires are for the 5th injector. So now we've actually gone inside the car, which is incredibly dirty because it's been sitting in the garage for almost 2 years. So that goes into this whole mess. So you've got the ECU. If you have a, I don't know if it can't be every year, I don't think, of the NA, but because the instructions said that this was behind the seat, and it's not, obviously, it's up here. And that's not, well, there is a little bit of rust in there, but that's mostly just insulation. You take this cover off. I have the ABS module and the ECU, and then what happens is you have piggyback connectors that add in all these extra wires. And this is where the boost signal is supposed to go. It's an EGR valve of some kind that's been made to give you boost, and you can so that's where this will go. That one that comes from the intake, And I have a second T that I can tee into this to run a boost gauge off of, which I'll end up doing eventually also. And then on the other end of all these wires, you have the timing and fuel control. So these cards essentially like override or modify the signals to and from the ECU in a way that allows the stock ECU to understand boost and give it more fuel, along with the fifth injector existing. And there's been a lot of debate if, you know, if using cards is like the way to go and whatever, but this kit, the way it's set up, essentially they've had people buy the kit and then try to use an aftermarket ECU and have someone tune it, and no one's been able to get any more power out of their car, allegedly, tuning with an aftermarket like standalone ECU versus just using these cards. So I'm gonna leave this like this for now until I get the thing like running and everything, but then this will all go back. These wires will end up somewhere over there to the side where I can, you know, mess with the cards if I need to. But typically, from what the instructions have said, they're already set up the way you need them as soon as you get them. So the only other thing I need to do in here is a boost gauge, which I haven't ordered yet. I don't know why, but I didn't. And then I'll probably just put it in one of those center vent holes like everyone on the world does once I get the tombstone put back in, which has to be dremeled to fit the radio, because the NAs, the early ones, had like a weird DIN shape that wasn't actually a double DIN, it wasn't a single DIN, and it was some mutated thing. So that I'll have to do later. But I also got so actually I would use both center vents, because I've also got a wideband O2 sensor. I've got to install that. Don't know 100% where yet. I have to read the instructions and see and whatever, because the other thing is I'm thinking I'm eventually going to get an aftermarket exhaust for it, like all the way from here down, everything, because the normal O2 sensor is there, and I know you're, from what I've briefly read, you're supposed to get the wideband pretty close to your exhaust manifold so it gets the most accurate readings before it, you know, goes too far down the pipe and whatever. So I'll have to find out how that all works. The other thing, there is a top for this box. It was seriously just sitting in the side of this box, which had all the ECU wiring stuff in it. So when I took that out, I found it. I wasn't able to use the bolts that it came with because, like I said yesterday, this box kind of got deformed when I put it on. It didn't fit right. So I ended up needing longer bolts so that they could go through and grab and pull to conform the top of this thing to fit the shape of this thing. So there's like that's the last bolt that's left over from the original IAC mount. That rusty one, I think, is from a radiator fan. And these two back ones, they actually both match. They've got a Phillips head on them, so those are from the same thing, but I don't remember what. But either way, luckily a ton of stuff on here has the same threads, both on the kit and just on the car itself, which makes sense. So it was really easy to get that on there. So at least as of right now, there will be no hood scoop, because I don't want to really cut a hole in the hood anyway, and if this thing's going to be like this, with it closed off on top, then there's no reason to. But it does mean that if I did want to do a scoop, I could cut a specific hole in it and actually put some kind of seal on it, so it actually seal to the hood and make it more functional, but that doesn't matter right now. So, as of right now, the only thing I have left to do, I've got to get the new crank pulley for the Supercharger. I've got to get that 90 degree for over there to run the intake across. The support bracket under the intake needs to, one of the bolts on the bottom is out because I couldn't get it to thread back in, so I'm going to take that apart and try to redo that. It needs an oil change, and obviously it needs coolant. that hose is not connected, and then the one down there doesn't have a clamp on it. So pretty much like tomorrow or something, I'll go under the car, I'll fix the support, I'll do an oil change, get that hose back on, and then I'll probably I might start it, make sure it runs before I put coolant back in it, because it's not going to overheat in like 3 seconds of it running. But then again, I guess that wouldn't really matter that much. So I will probably put coolant in it, put this last hose on. I just haven't put this on because I'm waiting for that belt. Just so it's not in the way, so it's easier to do, but whatever. So yeah, it's almost done. Finally got all the vacuum stuff figured out. Just had to ask questions. I got responses very quickly, especially today. I asked about, what's supposed to be connected to that boost sensor thing, and I got a reply in, I don't know, an hour or less, I think. So I had a whole bunch of time. I had time to do other stuff, but not so much time that I was like sitting around with nothing to do. So that ended up working out. So it's like, yes, the instructions are not perfect unless you have like, I think an NB. Those instructions would be pretty much exactly what you needed. Because that's what all the pictures and stuff are from. They're from a 99, but I was still able to figure it out with some help. And, if I wouldn't have taken things apart as haphazardly, maybe it would have been a little easier, but it is possible to figure it all out. So we'll get that other stuff done, and maybe by the end of the week, we'll have that 90, and then I'll be able to try to start it.